Hi, I'm Christina and today I'm going to talk about my favourite books of 2022. So I have my top 15 books of 2022 here to talk about, and I have loosely placed them in an order. So I have my top 15 books and then my top 10 books and my top 5 books, and I think they can kind of move around within those kind of categories because you could probably ask me on a different day and I would put one higher than the other. So yeah, they're kind of loosely my top 15, my top 10 and my top 5. So let's just get straight into it. So from my top 15, I have We Are the Brennans by Tracey Lange. So this one is a debut novel and it's a contemporary novel and it's about one family called the Brennans. Now they are an Irish Catholic family living in New York. They are a father and they have 4 adult children and their mother has sadly passed away. So basically they have a family business which is to run a pub, and all of the children are kind of involved in some way, and this is just a great book about families, about family dynamics and just exploring the relationships between all of these characters. And I just had a really good time with it. It's written really well and I was very invested in these characters and I was very invested in this family as a whole. So there we go, my first one in my top 15. So the next book I have is Girl A by Abigail Dean. So this one was marketed as a thriller, but it reads to me more like a contemporary novel with thriller elements. And that's because the majority of the plot of the story has actually happened prior to the start of the novel. So the story focuses on 7 siblings and they've had a very difficult childhood and there's been serious child abuse in their past, and their mother is in prison and their father has passed away, and then their mother dies in prison and she makes the eldest daughter, Girl A, the executor of her will. And then this girl has to contact all of her other siblings, some of which she hasn't spoken to in a long time, because after this incident they are put up for adoption and social services takes over, and a lot of them are split up for their own kind of personal safety and for their own well-being and development. So this is definitely a very slow kind of book. It's very slow paced. It's definitely more character driven, and I just really enjoyed the main female lead in this. She is such a strong character. She's gone through so much and you just can't help but rooting this main character. She's really a very strong person, and I just thought all the way this was looked at was just handled really well. So she's called Girl A because obviously they're trying to keep their identities a secret, and she's Girl A because she is the eldest girl out of the family, and then the eldest boy is called Boy A, and then the second eldest girl is Girl B, and so on. And I just found it very moving as well. There was parts of this book and it's so hard hitting. It really hit me hard. And this girl was just going through so much in her past and so much in her present, and there was just so much unresolved trauma as well for her, and also just so well explored. And yeah, I just thought the characters in this were just absolutely brilliant, and yeah, thought it was really good. So the next book I have is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor, and this one is a thriller with horror elements, and the story focuses on a vicar and their daughter. So they're moving to a small village because there has been an incident at the previous church where the vicar was working, and now they've moved to this small village and it has a very dark history. So back in the reign of Queen Mary I, there were martyrs burned at the stake, and then in more recent history 2 teenage girls disappeared, and then even more recently the previous vicar of the church committed suicide. So it's got lots of kind of spooky elements, there's some kind of paranormal elements, and I just thought it was really well done. I was completely engrossed in this. There are so many twists and turns. There were so many things I didn't see coming, so many things that shocked me. And yeah, I just thought it was really well done. It's definitely the best thriller that I read in 2022. And yeah, I just had a really good time with it. So the next book I have is Flamingo by Rachel Elliott, and this one was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. And I still think this one is a little bit of a hidden gem because I haven't heard that many people talking about it. This book has themes of family, friendship, found family, and belonging. And the story focuses on two families who at one point in time were neighbours, and we also focus on their children. I just really enjoyed this book. I found it very moving at times. It was a very emotional read. I found it very hard-hitting, and it did make me cry, so it definitely impacted me. I thought the characters in this were excellent, and the characters felt very, very real to me, and it had some lovely themes of just friendship and just really, really lovely book. It kind of felt a little bit reminiscent to me of Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine, and that's one of my favourite books of all time. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So the next one I have is Everyone Dies Famous in a Small Town by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock, and this one reads like a collection of short stories. And the characters in this are wonderful. It's set in the 1990s in Alaska and Western America, and we see from 9 different perspectives, and all of these people do live in small towns, and it's just so well written. It's so hard hitting at times, and I just really, really enjoyed this one. I love the way that you're introduced to so many different characters, and then she just kind of weaves all of these stories together seamlessly, and it just worked really, really well. So that was my top 15, and now we're moving into the top 10 books. So I have The End of Men by Christina Sweeney-Baird, and this one is a science fiction novel. It's a post-apocalyptic novel, and a virus is wreaking havoc on the earth. Now this virus is only killing men. I think the mortality rate is about 90% of men will die. So it really does look at what would happen in the world if within a matter of days or weeks 50% of the population just died. And it's told through so many different perspectives. I think you hear from about 15 or 16 perspectives. So the scope in this is absolutely massive. Now, obviously, you don't hear from all of those people the same amount of time. There are 3 main characters. And yeah, I just think it's written really well. It's definitely very hard hitting. It looks at survival, it looks at loss, and it looks at grief. And obviously it looks at those themes on an incredibly large scale, like a global scale. And you know, the whole kind of level of a country and a whole community is all grieving at the exact same time. And I just thought it was really well done. It felt incredibly realistic. And she looked at lots of different questions, like if you did lose 50% of the population in the world, obviously that's 50% of the workforce, and then just all of the implications and repercussions of this. And yeah, I thought it was a really well told post-apocalyptic novel. She definitely thought about a lot of different things, and there was lots of different questions raised. And yeah, I thought the scope was excellent to cover so many different characters. It worked really, really well. So the next book I have is The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman, and this is the 3rd book in the Thursday Murder Club series. Now the Thursday Murder Club is my favourite series of mystery novels of all time. I absolutely love these characters. So we have 4 main older people, and they all live in this retirement village, and they've created the Thursday Murder Club to look at unsolved cases. And the reason they're called the Thursday Murder Club is the room that they want to use is only available on a Thursday, hence they become the Thursday Murder Club. I just love these books. The characters are brilliant. It's so quintessentially British. There's so much humour in this. It's so charming, and I always just have such a good time with these characters. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. So the next book is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one is a romance novel, and the family is having a birthday meal for the father of the family, and our main character is there with her fiance, and they're with their mum and their dad and their sister and her partner. And then at the end of the meal she receives a phone call, and it's from her husband. Now her husband has been presumed to be dead for a couple of years, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing that he could still be alive. And I just thought this was so brilliant. It was so hard-hitting, it was so heart-wrenching at times, because she truly loves both of these people in her lives. So her husband was her high school sweetheart, and she's obviously been grieving for him, and she has grieved his death, and she's found a new relationship, and she is now engaged to this man. And it's so good. It's so captivating. I was just really rooting for all of these characters, and she does that so well. There isn't a time when you're rooting for one man particularly over the other. She doesn't paint anyone as the villain and anyone as like the hero. You look at both of these men, and obviously you see the good inside both of them, and it's just really well written, and it's such a heartbreaking premise, and it's just written so well. And obviously this is a story about love and about grief and about finding love again after you've lost someone, and just kind of accepting who you are with different people and different versions of yourself when you're with different people. Obviously it's a story about love. And yeah, it was really good. It was really heartbreaking at times. But yeah, really would recommend it. So the next book I have is Salt Lick by Lulu Allison. This one was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022, and it's a science fiction novel. It looks at the effects of climate change and then a deadly pandemic, and there's so many interesting characters in this. I really enjoyed it. One interesting part of it, which was very unique, is that there is a herd of feral cows in this novel, and that's kind of portrayed in snippets of poetry, which is just distributed throughout the narrative. And at times I thought that was incredibly poignant. The whole story overall is very moving, and there was one part in this novel that absolutely shocked me. I was completely astonished by something that happened, so much so that I had to go back and read a section again. So yeah, the characters are excellent. It really explores themes of family, of found family, of friendship, and it's just kind of looking at the world in a perhaps not too distant future if we don't try and do something about climate change, seeing how this could shape the world and how this will shape the people who live there, and just kind of affect the decisions you can make about where you can live. You probably can't live in a village anymore. You have to kind of move into the city, and just the effects that, you know, the roads aren't going to be maintained and there aren't going to be enough people to do certain things, and then the effects of flooding. And yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were excellent, and I don't hear too many people talking about this novel either, so again I think this one's a little bit of a hidden gem. So the next book I have is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This one is a mystery novel, and it's her debut novel. Now I absolutely love the format of the book. It's a mixed media format, and the book itself is presented as a pack of evidence which has been given to two trainee lawyers, and you read it as if you are one of the trainee lawyers yourself being presented with this evidence. So all you know is that a crime has been committed and a person is in prison for the crime, and you are now at the stage where an appeal can happen for this person. Now the crime itself is around a group of people, and this group of people were part of an amateur dramatic society, and so the evidence kind of starts from the time of the auditions and it goes all the way up until the opening night. Now you don't know anything else about the crime, you don't know any background about the case, you just thrown in at the deep end as the trainee lawyer would be, and you're just given this pack of evidence and you kind of have to sift through it and read it. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really innovative concept. I really liked the way it was presented, and I really liked the way that you were just sitting there trying to solve the puzzle yourself, trying to solve the mystery. And yeah, it was really good fun. It was a really enjoyable reading experience, and I just really liked the way that she kind of put this all together. It was very clever at times, And yeah, I had a really good time with it. So those were my top 10 books of 2022, and now we're moving into my top 5 books. So the next one I have is the book of The Unnamed Midwife by Meg Elison. This one is a science fiction novel, and this is another one where the world has been ravaged by a virus. So this one is a post-apocalyptic novel. And in this one, we meet a group of boys in the future who are scribes, and they are just about to start transcribing the journal, which is called the Book of the Unnamed Midwife. And so we start reading along with them as they are transcribing it. So you know that this has been set in the future, in whatever world they currently inhabit. So this journal is written by a woman who is a midwife in the old world, in our world, and she is unnamed. She never actually discloses her real identity throughout her journal, and she uses lots of different pseudonyms. Now I have to say, this is an incredibly dark book. It's incredibly bleak at times, and it can be very horrific in places too, but I think this is probably one of the most realistic post-apocalyptic novels I have ever read, and as such it's now one of my favourite post-apocalyptic novels that I've ever read. It's really, really well portrayed. Like I said though, it's very dark, it's very, very bleak, but it's really, really well written. So the next book I have is Carrie Soto is Back, and Taylor Jenkins Reid is the only author to feature twice on my favourite books of 2022. In this one, our main character is called Carrie Soto, and she is a retired tennis player, and now she's back in the world of tennis to defend her title. I really, really enjoyed this one. It was very hard-hitting at times. It was so wonderful to follow a main character who was a woman who was so ambitious. And I also just really loved that this just wasn't a book about tennis. It did make me fall in love with tennis as a sport. There were times when I was literally sitting on the edge of my seat to see who would win the next point, who would win the set, who would win the match. It was very, very exciting. And another part of this book that I absolutely loved is the focus on relationships. So one of the most important characters in this, alongside Carrie, is her father, and her father is also her coach for the majority of her career. And this book was just excellent at focusing on the relationships, just seeing how their relationship developed throughout her life. And we followed her from the age of a very young girl throughout her career. And yeah, I thought it was really good. This book made me cry. It was a very emotional read at times, very moving, and yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it. So now we're going into my top 3 favourite books of 2022. In third place, I have The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. This one was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022, and this one is a historical fiction novel with a touch of magical realism. So the magical realism comes from the fact that one of the narrators is a fig tree, and I absolutely loved that. I thought it was so unique, it was so innovative, and I found it really, really impactful. So this book is set in both London and Cyprus. In the beginning of the story, we meet a father and daughter, and they're currently grieving for their wife and their mother, respectively. And then we go back in time to Cyprus in the 1970s, and we see when the parents first meet. And this book is just written so, so beautifully. She writes gorgeous literature. I really, really enjoyed it. And there's so many wonderful themes in this, like the themes of family and love and belonging and identity and heritage. And there's also a focus on war and loss and hope. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I thought it was written, like I said, beautifully. It was very, very poignant at times. It was very moving. Yeah, it was a really good book. So now we're into my top 2 favourite books of 2022, and I can't always decide which one is my best book of 2022. So I'm just going to tell you about both of them, and it can kind of change on different days. But for today, the one I've put in second place is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. So this one is a historical fiction novel, and it spans a century. We first meet the main character when she's almost 6 years old, and it's 1886, and it's in Oxford. Now, her father is a lexicographer, and he is one of the lexicographers compiling the Oxford English Dictionary It's going to be the first ever edition. And this little girl, much like her father, absolutely loves words, and a lot of her days she spends sitting in the cryptorium with her father and all of the other lexicographers, and she sits under the table and watches their feet and their socks. And one day, one of the words flutters down and she catches it, and that's the beginning of the Dictionary of Lost Words. I absolutely loved this story. It's written so beautifully. I was so connected to these characters. I found it very, very emotional at times. It was a very moving read. This book made me cry more than once, so it really did kind of impact me as I was reading it. And it's just such a lovely story about words. I absolutely love linguistics and words, so I think that just really helped to fall in love with this story. It's really, really well written, and it's her debut novel, and I think for a debut it's just absolutely spectacular, and yeah, really, really, really good. So then my favourite book of 2022, although on some days I will say it's the Dictionary of Lost Words, but here it is The High House by Jessie Greengrass. So this one is a science fiction novel, and it's set in a not too distant future, and again this one also looks at the effects of climate change, and this one was shortlisted for the Orwell Prize for Political Fiction in 2022, and I just absolutely love this book. The characters are so brilliant. I was so connected to these characters. The story is written so beautifully. The writing is absolutely beautiful. And I read this book in a single day. And I think that's probably why I'm having to put it as my favourite book of the year, because I haven't read a book in a single day for years and years and years. And yeah, I just was absolutely engrossed in this story. I thought it was just so poignant at times, so moving, so much so that when I was reading the final page, it hit me so, so hard. And I just absolutely loved it. I literally just sat there and read the final page of this book about 3 or 4 times in succession. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were excellent, and yeah, it's just written so, so beautifully, and I just really enjoyed it. It really kind of touched me, and yeah, it was very, very poignant. So that's it. Those are my top 15 favourite books of 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you've liked it, and please do subscribe if you'd like to hear more of me talking about books. Now, if you have read any of those books, I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if I have convinced you to read any of them, I would love to know that too. So I'll see you in my next one. Bye.